Alrighty, so today's webinar is going to be on rest and recovery. My name is Rachel Mangold. I am one of the graduate assistants for Wellbeing and Fitness within University Wellbeing and Recreation. I have my bachelor's in psychology and I'm a certified personal trainer and health coach. So let's go ahead and jump in. Why is it important to rest and recover? So the adaptations in the body can only occur as a result of the interaction between whatever our stressor is, whether that's physical or mental, and then the rest after. So without rest and recovery, our progress and the ability for us to adapt to the stress becomes limited. An overabundance of stress can lead to maladaptation and an overload on the sympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is in control for our flight or fight response. So if we're constantly in this high alert state and we're not able to quickly switch into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is important for rest and relaxation, we cannot recover properly. So stress and an abundance of stress leads to cortisol. So stress and cortisol are connected. And chronically high levels of cortisol and inflammation can lead to poor performance. So I want to talk really quick about good versus bad stress. So stress isn't really necessarily a bad thing for the body, whether that is mental or physical stress. Everyone has stress in their life and stress can be useful. So there's a difference between distress and eustress. So distress is more of a negative type of stress. It is anxiety provoking, maybe fear provoking. It's a threat to us. It brings on negative emotions, whereas eustress can be positive. So eustress, maybe it's more challenging to us, or maybe, it does give us a little bit of anxiety, but it's more excitement and a willing to want to perform. And that is also associated with more positive emotions. So without stress, though, we would never change. Nothing would ever change in our body. Our body wants to maintain homeostasis. So that's just kind of, we would stay at our baseline, right? Essentially. So then that kind of brings in the Sud Principle, which traditionally is only applied to physical activity, but the Sud Principle stands for specific adaptations to imposed demands, right? So our body is only going to respond to the stress and the specific kinds of stress that we put on it. So for example, if I go to the gym and I'm only training arms, my legs are not going to grow. They won't necessarily shrink. I mean, they might, but no real change is going to occur in my legs if I'm only training my upper body. Or if I'm training to, have a really, really good vertical max jump, and I'm training for that specific skill, my body will adapt to perform that specific skill better. I'm not going to become a great runner if I'm training in my vertical max, right? The two don't go hand in hand. So this, I believe, can also apply over to the mental stress that we put on our body, right? So like if we're studying for one class and not the other, we can't extrapolate that studying to our secondary class. We're only going to retain the knowledge. We're only going to grow and evolve in the knowledge for the one class that we are stressing ourselves for. So as we talked about, recovery and adaptation. Adaptation is a result of the interaction between stress and rest. However, a more important factor in the stress equation is how we perceive and respond to the stress. So this goes back to the distress versus eustress and whether or not we view stressful situations or personal stressors in our life as challenging versus threatening. So when we view stress as a challenge, like, okay, this is something I have to overcome, this is work that I have to accomplish, we're more able to handle the stress in a positive way and succeed and adapt in a progress kind of way rather than regressing. However, if we're viewing a lot of our stress as a threat, that's when we get these really high cortisol levels. We're constantly in the sympathetic state of mind, that flight versus fight. And then that can lead to regression. It can lead to poor recovery. If you're an athlete, that can easily lead to injury or if it's more academic or career related, that could lead to burnout, right? So it's kind of how we view this. Like, okay, I have this really big task coming up. Am I viewing it as a challenge, something that I'm excited to complete and conquer, or am I viewing it as threatening? Like, I have no idea how I'm going to get this all done. This is going to take so much time. I'm so overwhelmed. Challenge versus threat. So if we continually load our body with high levels of distress, so that bad stress that we're viewing as a threat, our bodies will stop adapting the way we want it to, and we could either regress or find ourselves in survival mode. Now, I don't like using the phrase survival mode because it's a little daunting sounding. However, it's important to know our bodies are striving to maintain this homeostasis. And all our body really cares about is protecting itself and its vital processes. So, are we breathing? Is our heart beating? Can we move? Can we transmit nervous signals? And so it doesn't care that you want to max out on your deadlift or that you want to earn your doctoral degrees, two things that can be very stressful on both the central nervous system and, our physical bodies and our mental health. Our body doesn't care about that. So if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, our body's going to keep reverting and not wanting to adapt because it is so stressed out, and cortisol through the roof at this point, right? So we cannot adapt at that point. We're going to begin to regress essentially. So then how do we avoid this maladaptation, right? This regression? Well, we rest and we prioritize recovery. It's completely what this webinar is all about. The other thing, as we come off talking about good versus bad stress, is thinking about how you can reframe how you view stress and assess how you are responding to the current stressors in your life. So, questioning yourself, like, do you feel in control of your stressors? Do you feel like you're making things happen or things are just happening to you, right? How much control do you have over your own life? And then secondly, are the ways in which you respond to stress sustainable? So if you continued as you are right now, the rest of your life, every single day, and how you respond to stress and how you handle tough situations, like, is that sustainable? Do you think you will come out on the other side a better person with more success and progress in the areas of life that you want to succeed in? If that's no, then it's time to take a look at how you can respond better, right? Another thing you can do is regularly take a mental and self inventory. So, maybe you're not even sure if you are regressing or if you are in this heightened state of flight or fight. So some questions to ask yourself are you feeling burnt out? Like, are you feeling as though things are overwhelming and you're just not getting anything done? Are you even enjoying the things that you're doing? Are you losing interest in hobbies, in your work, in your career? When is the last time you took a day off from work or from the gym? So when's the last time you had a rest day? When's the last time you just did nothing for an entire day and just focused on yourself? Another question is, like, do you feel as though you're on all the time? Like, you're constantly in this go state, ready to work, ready to do something, ready to keep moving, constantly on. You're never off. Your brain is never off. Your body never feels like it can actually just sit and relax. And then finally, when is the last time you did something for enjoyment? So I will ask this question a lot of times to our clients in the well-being coaching program, because a lot of times what I find, especially in students who are putting themselves through difficult degrees or they're studying really hard, they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do, I'll ask them, when is the last time you did something for enjoyment? And more often than not, they can't, one, think of a time, or two, they can't even remember what they like to do for enjoyment, little things that don't revolve around school or work. So that's a really important question to ask yourself. When is the last time you did something just for pure enjoyment, no ulterior motive? All right, so I want to touch a lot on sleep. So sleep is the most basic form of rest and recovery, but it's really the most useful. It is the most Again, simple. We all do it. We all sleep. But it's amazing what it can do for the body, both mentally and physically. So the simplest way you can improve your stress and your recovery, if you feel like that is something you need to do, is by prioritizing an effective and consistent sleep schedule. So effective in you're getting enough and you're falling asleep, easily, not waking up, and consistent. So are you going to bed at the same time? Are you waking up at the same time? Those two factors are really critical. So some of the most successful athletes, CEOs, and productive individuals in general prioritize sleep despite their busy schedules. And when I say prioritize, I mean that they ensure that they get enough sleep at roughly the same time every single day. It doesn't matter that, they have some things that they need to get done, or maybe they're behind on something, or, maybe they're thinking about going to the gym again a little bit later. No, they're prioritizing their sleep. They're getting 8+ hours. Some athletes sleep upwards of 10 hours, but they prioritize their sleep. It's a non-negotiable for them. So while we sleep, some very important hormones, which we're not going to get into because this is not a hormone webinar, but there are very important hormones that are important for recovery. The levels of those hormones rise when we sleep. And so without them, we cannot expect to recover the way in which we often intend. So if, say, we are working out and we want to increase our muscle mass, right, through hypertrophy, so we're putting the stress on our body, we're lifting, doing all the things we're supposed to do, we're eating enough, but okay, we're not sleeping. Okay, well, then our body cannot take inventory of that stress and then support the stress with recovery and rest in the way that it needs to. So 8 hours is standard, and for many, I would often say that it could be seen as a minimum. So sometimes 8 hours isn't even enough. 6, definitely not enough. Some people can function and do really well on 6-7 hours of sleep, but as a general rule of thumb, 8 should kind of be that golden standard. And I know and I understand that it can seem overwhelming to prioritize and take 8+ hours to sleep every night when you have a ton of responsibilities and tasks. Like, you have homework to do, you have studying, you have exams, you have work, you have your own career that you're trying to grow, especially as you're a young adult. So taking away time to quote unquote be productive and work seems like it doesn't make sense, right? We constantly have to be working and striving to progress and get better. But that's not going to happen if you're not sleeping enough. So if you're getting 3, 4, 5 hours of sleep a night, I can almost guarantee you that your productivity, your efficiency, your creativity, that is all probably suffering at this point. So even if you are trying to spend 20 hours a day doing work and being productive, you would probably get the same amount of work done and probably more efficient work done in a 10-hour day or an 8-hour day after you've had a full night's sleep. So some things just to keep in mind there. Next 2 slides we're going to go over are just some additional forms of recovery. So we talked about this a little bit, taking rest days. So you can make progress working out 2 days a week or 3 days a week. You don't have to train 7 days a week, every day, day in, day out, 2-a-days in order to make progress. More often than not, if you're training 7 days a week, you're probably doing your body more harm than good. You're intentionally putting it in this chronically stressed and high alert state. That's not going to bode well for recovery. You're never giving it the chance to recover, so it never will. And without that rest, remember, we cannot adapt. So you have to utilize rest days if you expect to make progress in your physical goals. But this is also going to apply to your cognitive effort as well. So this is something that I struggle with because I have no problem taking days off from the gym, but taking off days from work and school is much harder for me, I will admit. So when you take a day off from work or school, you're giving yourself a cognitive break. It's going to be just like taking a rest day from the gym. Another way that you can do this, if you don't think it's feasible to take an entire day off, is utilizing mental breaks. So, research shows that taking a cognitive break, essentially a rest period for 10 to 20 minutes every about 1 to 2 hours, 90 minutes to rest your brain, um, is beneficial, and it will increase your productivity and creativity in the following working blocks of that 50 to 90 minutes. And during this time, it's just about resting your brain. So it's not a time to get more tasks done and cross more things off your to-do list. It's okay. Can I meditate? Can I take a walk outside? Can I at least get some fresh air? Get some food, just get up and stretch a little bit. So if you don't think that you can take an entire day off of that, of work and school, utilize those mental breaks as well. Some additional forms of recovery. So one is stretching and mobility work. So this is more specifically a form of physical recovery, but there is a chance that the breath work involved in stretching, yoga, or mobility work can also play into your mental recovery as well. Integrating regular creative breaks. So this is one of my favorite things that I challenge a lot of my clients to do, is taking time to be creative. And that can be in whatever modality you choose. It doesn't have to be art, which is a lot of times what people will think. It's doing something creative. Maybe that's, cooking for you. Maybe it's, thinking of new ideas, just brainstorming things that you want to achieve. Being creative in some capacity for the sole purpose of pure enjoyment is a great way to focus on your mental recovery. And a lot of times, when you're more creative in modalities outside of your work and school, you'll see that creativity extrapolate into your work and academic success. Lastly, extended breaks is another form of recovery. An extended break can last anywhere from a week to several months, and you'll see a lot of times high performing athletes utilize this. Olympians, long distance runners, they will take a break from their physical activity for weeks at a time. And that's not to say that they're not doing anything physically active. They're just taking a break from that specific form during that time, and they're letting their body recover and not doing anything super intense. Now, it's probably not feasible to take that much time off from work or school or activity in general, physical activity as well. Probably not feasible for most people, and I understand that. But an extended break can be highly useful in revitalizing your resiliency, your sense of purpose, and the enjoyment in what you do and what you're working towards. So if you have the chance to take days off of work, if you have PTO, take it. You're not gaining anything from saving it up and not using it. Take those days off. If you have the chance to take a break from school, maybe have a gap year or a gap semester, take it. Allow yourself to have those extended breaks and see how it can lead to further success down the road, even if it doesn't necessarily fit within the timeline that you're thinking. So thank you for listening into this webinar today. In case you are watching it from YouTube as well, thanks for joining in. Again, my name is Rachel Mangold. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or would like a certain topic covered on either one of our well-being webinars or our well-being bulletins, please email me at rm810015@ohio.edu. Thanks.